Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, opening your window, and seeing a creature over 13 feet tall slowly walking across the landscape. Its body covered in thick brown fur, curved tusks longer than a car, intelligent eyes watching the world around it. We're not talking about a zoo or a theme park. We're talking about mammoths living alongside us. It sounds impossible, but the truth is that mammoths disappeared only a few thousand years ago, a mere blink of an eye in Earth's history. While the pyramids of Egypt had not even been built yet, the last mammoths were still roaming remote Arctic islands. And that raises a fascinating question. What would have happened if they had simply never gone extinct? What would our planet look like today? Would cities be different? Would ecosystems be healthier? Would humanity have followed the same path? Or would we be living in a completely different world? To answer that, we need to travel back thousands of years. During the last ice age, vast grasslands stretched across parts of Europe, Asia, and North America. These lands were not frozen wasteland, as many people imagine. They were rich ecosystems, teeming with life. Giant bison, woolly rhinoceroses, wild horses, dire wolves, cave lions, and above them all, the mammoths. Mammoths were not just large animals. They were nature's engineers. Every step they took helped shape the landscape. By knocking down trees, they prevented forests from taking over the grassland. By uprooting vegetation, they encouraged the growth of new plants. By spreading seeds during their migrations, they helped plant species colonize new regions. Their impact was so significant that entire ecosystems depended on them. When the mammoths disappeared, something extraordinary happened. The vast grasslands slowly began to change. Shrubs spread, forests advanced, the soil started retaining more heat. The dynamics of countless species were altered. Many scientists believe that the extinction of mammoths triggered environmental changes that continue to influence our planet to this day. But imagine that never happened. Imagine the mammoths survived. Perhaps small groups found safe refuges. Perhaps isolated populations managed to escape environmental pressure. Perhaps humans learned to coexist with them instead of hunting them into extinction. In this alternate scenario, mammoths would survive through the millennia. They would witness the rise of agriculture. They would watch the first cities being built. They would see the birth of empires. While humans domesticated horses, cattle, and sheep, mammoths would continue roaming the vast plains of the northern hemisphere. But the relationship between humans and mammoths would probably not be simple. Imagine a Bronze Age farmer watching a herd of giants crossing his fields. Hundreds of tons of weight, destroying crops in a matter of hours. Conflicts would be inevitable. Entire civilizations might develop strategies to deal with these animals. Walls, massive fences, protected migration corridors, specific laws, perhaps even specialized military units. Mammoths would be seen as valuable resources. Their tusks would provide ivory. Their fur would be used for clothing. Their dung would serve as fuel and fertilizer. But they would also be dangerous. An adult mammoth could easily destroy primitive structures. In certain regions, human communities might organize their lives around the seasonal movements of these animals, much like ancient cultures once followed bison herds. Over the centuries, a new reality would emerge, a reality in which humans would not be the only giants dominating the planet. And as civilizations grew, the constant presence of mammoths would begin to influence something even greater, the Industrial Revolution itself. Because when locomotives began crossing continents, when cities expanded at a rapid pace, when forests were cleared to make way for progress, humanity would face an incredibly difficult question. How do you build a modern world without destroying the last giants of the Ice Age? And that is exactly where our story becomes even more interesting, because the survival of mammoths might have changed not only nature itself, but also the way we view conservation, wild animals, and even our own role on this planet. Imagine a high-speed train speeding across modern-day Siberia. Outside, snow stretches across the horizon. Satellites monitor the weather. Drones fly over remote forests. And in the distance, a herd of mammoths slowly moves across the landscape. Not in a documentary, not in a wildlife reserve, but as a normal part of everyday life. If mammoths had survived into modern times, they would not simply be rare animals. They would be one of the most important species on Earth, perhaps even more important than elephants are today. But their survival would have created enormous challenges for humanity. As the human population grew over the past centuries, urban expansion consumed vast natural areas. Forests were cleared, grasslands disappeared, highways cut through ancient migration routes. Large animals suffered around the world. Mammoths would have been no exception. In fact, their immense need for space could have made them one of the most difficult species in history to protect. A single herd would need to travel hundreds of miles to find enough food. Now imagine tens of millions of people living in the very regions where these giants traditionally migrated. Conflicts would be inevitable. Farms would be destroyed. Infrastructure would be damaged. Accidents would occur. An adult mammoth could weigh up to 10 tons, heavier than many modern trucks. A collision between a vehicle and a mammoth would be devastating. Just as there are road signs today warning drivers about deer or moose crossings, some regions might have signs warning of mammoth crossings. But the impact of mammoths would go far beyond human conflicts, because modern scientists have discovered something remarkable about these giants. They didn't just live within ecosystems. They helped regulate the global climate. It may sound like an exaggeration, but there's a fascinating logic behind it. In Arctic regions, there is a layer of permanently frozen ground known as permafrost. This frozen soil stores enormous amounts of carbon accumulated over thousands of years. If the permafrost thaws, some of that carbon is released into the atmosphere, and that accelerates global warming. Now imagine millions of mammoths constantly walking across these lands, trampling the snow, compressing its surface, removing shrubs, keeping vast areas open. These actions allow winter cold to penetrate deeper into the soil. In other words, mammoths could help keep the permafrost frozen. Some modern researchers have even proposed projects inspired by this very idea. They believe large herbivores can help restore parts of the ancient Ice Age landscape. But in our alternate universe, there would be nothing to restore. The mammoths would never have disappeared. They would already be doing that work naturally. That means the planet might be slightly different from the one we know today. Perhaps some Arctic regions would remain colder. Perhaps certain climate-related processes would be less intense. Perhaps vast areas of tundra would still resemble the ecosystems that existed thousands of years ago. But the influence of mammoths wouldn't end with science. It would extend into human culture. Think about the animals that have deeply shaped our civilization. Lions, wolves, eagles, horses, all of them became symbols of power. Now imagine mammoths, gigantic creatures that survived from the Ice Age all the way to the age of satellites. They would likely appear on national flags, coins, monuments, sports teams, movies, literature, modern myths and legends. Children would grow up seeing mammoths not as extinct creatures, but as a real part of the world around them. Trips to observe mammoths would be as popular as African safaris. Millions of tourists would travel to specific regions just to witness the passage of these colossal herds. Entire industries would be built around this phenomenon. But alongside admiration would come an unavoidable problem: poaching. Whenever a species possesses something valuable, someone will try to profit from it. In the mammoth's case, it would be their enormous ivory tusk. Governments would need to invest billions in protection. Drones, satellite monitoring, specialized patrol units, advanced technology, a constant battle to prevent human greed from once again destroying something that nature took hundreds of thousands of years to create. And then we arrive at the most surprising question of all, a question few people ever consider. What would happen if, after thousands of years of living alongside mammoths, humans tried to domesticate them? Because throughout history, we've always tried to turn valuable natural resources into allies. We did it with horses, with camels, with oxen, with elephants. So why wouldn't we try the same with mammoths? And if that had happened, the modern world might look far stranger than anyone could imagine. In the next part, we'll explore how the domestication of mammoths could have transformed warfare, transportation, the global economy, and even the future of humanity itself. And the answer may be far more unexpected than you think. Imagine walking into a major 21st century city and seeing something that looks like it came straight out of an impossible dream. Electric buses glide silently through the streets. Holographic displays light up the avenues. And beside the central station, a trained mammoth waits calmly while its crew unloads tons of scientific equipment bound for the Arctic. If mammoths had never gone extinct, humanity would inevitably have tried to domesticate them. And perhaps it would have succeeded, at least partially. Modern elephants already demonstrate extraordinary intelligence. They recognize individuals, solve problems, remember complex routes, cooperate with humans. Mammoths, their close relatives, likely possessed similar abilities. But there was one crucial difference. They were larger, more cold-resistant, and adapted to extreme environments. That would have made them ideal partners in regions where horses, oxen, and even elephants would struggle to operate. The Empire of the North. Imagine the great empires of Eurasia discovering that trained mammoths could transport enormous loads across snow-covered terrain during winter. Trade routes would cross the Arctic long before the modern era. Northern cities would grow more rapidly. Scientific expeditions would reach remote regions centuries earlier than they did in our timeline. During the Industrial Revolution, locomotives would still dominate long-distance transportation. But in frozen, mountainous, or undeveloped regions, mammoths might remain irreplaceable. Armies would also attempt to use them. Not as simple war mounts, creatures so valuable would rarely be risked in direct combat, but as living logistical machines, transporting cannons, dragging supplies, clearing paths through deep snow. In many conflicts across the Northern Hemisphere, controlling mammoth routes could mean controlling an army's entire supply chain. The cost of coexistence. Domesticating a giant from the Ice Age would come at an enormous cost. An adult mammoth would consume hundreds of pounds of vegetation every day. It would require space, water, specialized veterinary care. Only governments, large corporations, or highly organized communities could afford to maintain them. This would create a new economic divide. Just as horses symbolized wealth in many ancient societies, owning trained mammoths would become a sign of extraordinary power. Noble families would display ceremonial mammoths. States would compete to protect and breed their finest animals. And inevitably, a moral debate would emerge. Should these giants work for humans, or should they remain completely wild? The great turning point. By the late 20th century, something would change everything. Scientists would begin to realize that mammoths were not merely cultural treasures. They were environmental allies. As global warming accelerated, studies would show that regions occupied by large herds remained colder and more open. Governments would begin protecting enormous migration corridors stretching across Siberia, Alaska, and northern Canada. Instead of trying to rebuild lost ecosystems, humanity would be defending an ecosystem that had never disappeared. And then we arrive at the present day, the world today. In this alternate universe, mammoths would be as important as whales, tropical rainforests, and glaciers. International treaties would be dedicated to their protection. Satellites would track every major herd. Live documentaries would broadcast migrations spanning thousands of miles. Children would learn in school not about the extinction of mammoths, but about how humanity nearly lost them and ultimately chose to protect them. And here is the most surprising part. The real change might not be technological. It would be psychological. In our world, we grow up believing that the giants of the Ice Age belong to the distant past. But in a world where mammoths still live, every day would remind us that Earth is still shared with creatures capable of transforming entire landscapes. Perhaps that would make us more cautious about destroying habitats. Perhaps the idea of conservation would have emerged much earlier. Perhaps we would never have developed the same belief that nature exists only to be replaced by concrete and machines. The final answer. So, what would happen if mammoths had never gone extinct? The world would have more giants, more wild migration corridors, more conflicts between human expansion and nature. But it might also have a slightly different climate, ecosystems closer to those of the Ice Age, and a far more conscious relationship with the animals that share this planet with us. Mammoths would not simply be survivors from the past. They would be a living force shaping the present. And perhaps the biggest question is not, what would a world with mammoths look like? But rather, what would humanity be like if it had never learned to live without them?